listening to the Xone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the Xone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the Xone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and we are coming to you live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xone@xoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, Xone Radio TV, and our main radio website where you can listen to the Xone Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. until midnight live, and then the rest of the time, which gives 7/24/365, the best of the Xone at www.xoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is a gentleman I have had the pleasure of having on the show a number of times before. His name is Frank Joseph, and he's published more than 12 books about the lost civilization of Atlantis, more than any other writer in history. Since 1980, he has been researching Plato's sunken city, traveling around the globe in search of relevant clues. And Frank was the editor-in-chief of Ancient American, an alternative science magazine from its inception in 1993 until his retirement 17 years later. His work has been received and given awards and recognition from the Midwest Epigraphic Society, the Burrows Cave Society, the Ancient American Artifact Preservation Society, and Japan's Savant Society, where he was cited as Professor of World Archaeology. As I said, he's been here on the show many times. He's been also interviewed by our friends Shirley MacLane, Whitley Strieber, Art Bell, and numerous other hosts. Frank Joseph lives day to day in the upper Mississippi Valley. And Frank, are you being affected by the flooding that's going on?
No, not at all, Rob. We live in an area that has not seen much severe weather. We're also pretty high up above the river itself, so thank you for your concern. But things have been relatively quiet here. We've been very fortunate in that regard.
Frank, you've got a new book that's coming out in a little while, and I love the topic. It's all about dolphins, and in fact, the title of the book is Our Dolphin Ancestors. Now, you and I have talked about Atlantis, we've talked about ancient artifacts, we've talked about ancient civilizations, but I believe this is the first time you and I are going to ever be talking about dolphins. Tell me about it.
Yes, it is, and I was really hesitant to even put my name on something like this because I don't have any background in biology or anything like that. So I just try to approach this subject from the point of view of an average person who's just interested in this subject, which I've always had sort of a passing interest in dolphins, but I wasn't a fanatic about it until I happened to go to Honduras just 2 years ago. And while I was in Honduras, I had an opportunity to get into the water for the first time with dolphins. And I figured, well, it'd be kind of interesting, but nothing more than that. Luckily, I was not in a SeaWorld or some overly commercialized horror like that where these animals are horribly abused. Instead, the institute that I visited was a scientific concern for the study of dolphins, and the dolphins are free to come and go whenever they want. They're very well taken care of, and they're studied more or less in their natural habitat. Well, in any case, to make a long story short, I finally got in the water with a dolphin and not his trainer. They don't have trainers at this institute in Honduras. They have scientists who try to be friends with the dolphin and study them. And there were a number of other tourists just like myself. And it was a wonderful thing to see, of course, but the thing that struck me most of all was when I was in the water with the dolphin and I came eye to eye with it. I looked into its eye, or rather, it looked into my eye. And it was one of the most striking single moments in my entire life because it was nothing as I expected. Of course, a dolphin is not a fish, it's a mammal.
Yeah.
I knew that, not much more than that. But when that animal looked at me, I knew at once that I was looking back at an extraordinarily intelligent creature. It was a sentient being on the same level if I was looking, say, into the eye of Isaac Newton or someone like that. That's the only way I can explain this experience, like I was in the presence of an extraordinary human being. And not only that, but I got the impression, it's a strong impression, that this dolphin was scanning me. It was scanning me not just externally, but internally. And I don't know why or what it was doing, but it was gaining a tremendous, it was like downloading my mind. And after I had visited with this creature, I talked with some of the other tourists, they're all Americans, and they all had the same general impression, that the animal was scoping them out. This, you can look into the eye of a dog or a cat, and it's a loving, wonderful animal, and some of them are very intelligent, more perceptive, I think, than people give them credit for. But this was altogether different. This was it's almost like a man in a dolphin suit. And when I got back to our ship, we were on a cruise at that time, I ransacked the ship's library for everything I could read about dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got home, and there are a lot of terrific books there, as you might imagine. Then when I got home, I just read like crazy about dolphins and got on the internet, and I found some incredible things, that stuff that was just mind-blowing material. That the research that's going on with dolphins today is terrific. It's fast-paced. Most people don't know anything about it because it's like fresh news, really fresh stuff going on, and a completely different conception of this creature eventually built in my mind. And my notes sort of automatically turned themselves into a book-length manuscript, and there it is, our Dolphin Ancestors.
I have to tell you that I agree with you 100%. Laura and I were able to interact with dolphins when we did a show in, where was it? The Dominican Republic. And we've also done, where were we? We were, just give me a sec here. We were in Belize. And there was an institute there that was reintegrating captured dolphins back into the wild.
Yes, that's terrific. I'm familiar with that.
It is. And, I agree with you, Frank, that when you look into the eyes, they actually look into your eyes, like you said, there is a definite connection. There is something there that a lot of people talk about. They just can't put it into words. And hopefully you can help us better understand that tonight. In your opinion, Frank?
Well, just a little bit. It's a huge mystery, and I think I have a little corner on it, but I don't make any presumption to totally understand it. I think it's an ongoing thing in which these dolphin researchers, called dolphinologists, have devoted lifetimes of study for. And what I've been able to do in my book was to sort of outline what these great researchers have done and try to give them credit for this terrific exposure of this miraculous animal.
So what can you tell us that these researchers have found that we yet don't know, Frank, without spoiling it too much, because I want people to buy your book, of course?
Well, there's no way within an hour I could do more than summarize the year's work that I put into this. But I would say there are so many outstanding characteristics, but among the most outstanding characteristics of dolphins now, although this is still controversial, not all researchers agree with this, but a growing number do, and that is the healing effect that dolphins have, the physical, emotional, healing effects that dolphins have on human beings. Their record of healing goes back literally thousands of years into legend and so forth, but are now confirmed, I think, to any objective observer. Just one example. This one institute in Scotland deals with people that are suicidal, that have really been unresponsive to drug treatment and so forth. That their depression is severe, extremely severe, and they're very bad cases. These unfortunate people have had in this one, it's called the Dodd Institute, D-O-D-D, the Dodd Institute, named after its founder, who I think is still alive, but he's an elderly man now, who began this program back in the 1970s, in which these people that are really considered hopeless cases are brought into contact in the open water with wild dolphins, not captive dolphins, wild dolphins. And the recovery of these people, the emotional rebuilding of their lives is miraculous. And not only because there's this loving bond with this fabulous animal, when a dolphin usually comes in contact with an ailing person, whether it's suicidal, emotional, or even physical, what they do, first of all, it would appear, not first of all, but I guess maybe first of all, they scan the sufferer with clicks. They have an incredible sonar array that is far superior to any military sonar today for its subtlety. It's unbelievable. They scan it, and the dolphin then is able to, not all at once, but over time, or not that long a time, usually weeks or just about a month or so, where this person goes through a fundamental change. I can't tell you how many lives have been saved by the Dodd Institute just by the simple procedure of bringing these people into the water with dolphins. The high success rate of dolphins with autistic children is truly inspiring. Some of the most touching stories I've read in my whole life involve children who have had very bad degrees of autism. I think of just one case that comes to mind in Florida, where this 11-year-old girl had never spoken her entire life. She had never uttered a single word. She showed that she was intelligent enough to understand things, but never spoke. Her mother had done everything conceivable for her, spent huge sums of money. Nothing worked. Absolutely nothing worked with this unfortunate girl. So as a last resort, the mother took her daughter to a Dolphin Institute in Florida, and the little girl interacted with the dolphin, and nothing seemed particularly extraordinary at all. The dolphin was very affectionate. The dolphins respond in a very gentle way to children, especially. And but the little girl didn't seem particularly changed by it at all. And so after the girl was removed from the water, the mother was toweling her down and talking to her as she always did. And she says, "Oh, I hope that was nice. The dolphin came to see you, and maybe we'll do this again sometime." And the girl uttered her first word, "Good."
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. There are other tales. A common one, actually common, where people that have severe cancer, brain tumors anywhere in their bodies. This one woman, again, a woman who was diagnosed with a rapidly growing brain tumor. They told her there's nothing we can do about it. It's moving too fast, and you have to prepare yourself for the inevitable.
Yeah.
Well, she also went through dolphin therapy, and what was remarkable about the dolphin, when the dolphin was scanning her, it went right to the exact spot in her head where she had this tumor, and the dolphin put it into remission.
How?
Just through its sonic pulses. Now, these are not trained dolphins. They're not. How could you train a dolphin to?
Yeah.
These are wild animals that come and visit certain areas, coastal areas, littoral areas, and they do this continuously. They do it right now. The scientific community is really kind of holding its breath on this because this is just not supposed to be. And this is when I began reading these anecdotal cases, and they began to pile up in the dozens and hundreds. I realized there's something very special going on here, and it really needs to get out.
Frank, do you think that the dolphins, by using their sonar and their superior intelligence, would be able to help people like our veterans who are coming back with PTSD?
I have no doubt about that. And I would not be at all surprised to learn that, in fact, there have been veterans who have been treated by dolphin therapy. The majority of people that go to dolphin therapy are not believers in the paranormal or wishful thinkers. Mm-hmm. They have tried everything else, and nothing has helped them. And usually someone will say, well, what have you got to lose?
Yeah.
Just try that. And now, does this mean the dolphins have a 100% success rate? By no means. Does it mean they have a high success rate? Absolutely. I don't know what the percentage would be, but it's high. Of course, it depends on the person involved as well. But the miraculous cases, which I've cited in my book, I think are enough to convince any objective observer that there is something really special going on. The relationship between dolphins and human beings is of an intimacy that is unlike any other animal, even a dog or a cat. Now, you can get pretty close to those animals, but this is of a very special nature, especially that these are not tame animals. These are wild animals. And when you realize that these stories go back thousands of years, this is not something somebody has invented as a New Age construct. These stories have been repeated from the beginning of human history. And I think it's important, for us to understand this, because we may be dealing with the only truly sentient being on the planet that is equivalent to our intelligence and may actually be superior to ours. People say, well, how can that be? The dolphins don't invent refrigerators or atomic bombs, and therefore they're not as good as we are.
I don't know. But the fact that they don't invent atomic bombs makes me believe that they are way more intelligent than we are.
That's right.
Yeah.
But that's some of the arguments. See, well, they don't invent technology.
Right.
What the hell? They don't need technology.
Exactly.
They have everything they could possibly. There's no need for them to build. So in that regard, they're superior because we are crippled by our need for all kinds of material things. They don't need any of that stuff. And they can do things which are, in many regards, far superior to anything we can do. I mean, they're amazing animals. They have not only have they saved numerous lives of suicides and people with brain tumors, they have saved people at sea by unknown thousands of people have been saved by dolphins. One of the most famous examples was Dick Van Dyke of television fame a few years ago. The Mary Tyler Moore Show or something like that.
The Dick Van Dyke Show.
Anyway, when Dick Van Dyke was on vacation, this is only like about 4 years ago, he was on vacation somewhere. He's in great shape. I mean, he's way up there in years. He's in his 90s or something.
Oh, he has to be, yeah.
Condition. Yeah, and he was on vacation someplace in Mexico, I think. And he's out there having a good time, and he's on this raft, this rubber raft, and he falls asleep on this rubber raft. And he wakes up on this flimsy little raft way out at sea, beyond the sight of land. So before he could panic, and he was on the he didn't even know which direction to go in. This man was lost at sea in a crummy little rubber float. A dolphin appeared and pushed him back to the beach. And that's a story in which he says, I owe my life to this porpoise. Well, he didn't know the difference between a porpoise and a dolphin. There's not much difference. It's okay. Porpoises, orcas, dolphins, and whales are all the same, the cetaceans.
Right.
The species variations on the same thing. But that's just one of numerous examples of wild cetaceans that just appear out of nowhere and have saved people's lives.
I remember years ago, Frank, having somebody on the show, and I can't remember who it was, to be honest with you, but they were telling me that They believe, now this person was an expert in mythology, they believe that the mermaids that were talked about in the olden days were actually dolphins.
Yes, I can see how that would be a confusion that would take place. Other mammals. However, there is an Australian researcher, and he's not an alternative researcher. He is a university-trained biologist. His name is Gary Opitz, and he began collecting stories of mermaids that were found around Australia, well, among the Aboriginal peoples. He found that one series of legends led to another, to New Zealand, throughout Java and Indonesia. He collected these traditions around the world of mermaids, and through Japan. And the physical description of these mermaids is remarkably similar. In Japan, they call it the kappa. In New Guinea, they call it the re. But it's the same animal. Over in Babylon, Babylonian times, they call it Ea. And it's described as the same thing, this mere folk, actually. Mermaids and mermen, merchildren. And this is where the book gets super controversial and unbelievable. But I put it out there for people to check over anyway, and I don't insist upon it, but I think that mermaids exist. And I think what they are is that they are the last remnant of a species that we share some relationship with, and so do the dolphins. And that goes back now to our shared evolution. That's why the book is called Our Dolphin Ancestors. The dolphins were originally land mammals, and they were forced by environmental conditions to make a decision that life often hands a species, and that is adapt or die. In other words, the land that they were on was shrinking because of rising sea levels. So they became over time sea mammals, and that is what they are today. And they have many vestigial traits that show their origins. Well, we went through a similar situation. When we were in an early stage of our evolution, we were also faced with the same challenge, adapt or die, as our land was being encroached upon by the sea. And we began to develop, we as a species began to develop sea mammal qualities, characteristics. The difference between the dolphins and ourselves was that the seas eventually retreated again and stranded us back on land. And therefore we have, within our own bodies, our own evolutionary history, sea mammalian traits which distinguish us from all the other primates. And that's several long chapters that I touch upon. It's more complex than I can describe here, but I believe that there is an interim species, or was an interim species, which was similar to dolphins and similar to ourselves. And that's referred to as mermaids or mermen or merfolk throughout history and around the world, and even today. So I think that there are more species to be wondered about in the sea. An example of that was when my wife and I, my wife's name is Laura too. That's a lovely name, so that makes that we both have lovely wives.
That's true.
When we were cruising from Florida down to Honduras, we happened to just look over the side at the right moment, and we saw an immense whale shark. Thing was maybe 40 feet long. It's the largest fish in the sea. And it was luminously green. I mean, it was like electric green, and it was, as it turns out. They have photospores, which are these elements in the body of the exterior body of a fish that light up, actually have lights. And it was astounding to see. It was a rare example. Very few have been seen. We were very lucky to see that. So the reason I mention that is because the sea is filled with numerous species of which we know nothing. Something like 20 new species are found every year. So I think that the potential for finding even mermaids is not at all impossible.
Frank, if the dolphins, which are mammals, have the ability to do so many wonderful things. What about killer whales? What about the humpback whale? Do they also have the ability to help the human race as the dolphins do?
Yes, they do, and there are examples of that. However, we have to understand that not all dolphins are as closely interacted with the human race as, for example, the spotted dolphins or the bottlenose dolphins. Mm-hmm. There are many other classes or races, however you want to put it, of dolphins that do not exhibit this close affinity for human beings. So when we say dolphins, we have to usually say they are either the spotted dolphin or the bottlenose dolphin. The others don't take the same interest. For example, there have been cases in which people have been in distress at sea, and dolphins that take no interest in them at all. And it's been determined in some of these cases that these dolphins that were indifferent to human suffering were not the bottlenose or the spotted type. Whales have sometimes, occasionally, not that often, occasionally exhibited the same care for human beings. Orcas are aggressive. They have merited their name, killer whales, because they have developed a taste for blood. Yeah. So they will kill other dolphins and eat them. They will kill seals and possibly human beings. There's a lot of controversy about that. There is one example that has been documented, and it shows you the brilliance, the intelligence of these creatures. There were two Canadian loggers back in 1964 who were working on a steep slope in British Columbia, and there was a small bay at the bottom of this steep slope, and the orca whales used to like to come and gather there from time to time for who knows what reason, maybe feeding or something like that. And this one logger thought it would be fun if he could roll one of the logs down on one of the whales. So he set one of the logs going down the steep slope, and it went careening down and struck one of the whales, and didn't kill it, but hurt it. And the other orca whales came to its aid, as they often do, and they escaped. Now, what's amazing about this story is that logger and his friend, his co-worker, got in their boat to go across the bay to go home at the end of the day at twilight. And as they set out in their boat, these orcas came, overturned their boat, and the man that escaped, that survived, had not been involved in this altercation, but the man that had set the log adrift disappeared, was never seen again. So how did they distinguish, or did they distinguish? But that kind of cooperation, that kind of revenge, is something you would think exclusive with human beings. But here the orcas realized what had happened, that those humans were responsible for hurting one of their kind. They had gotten together, and they had planned their revenge and went after that boat. That's an amazing story. There are a lot of stories like that, lots of stories like that.
Frank, you and I have to take a commercial break right now, my friend, but as always, great having you with us. When we come back, let's talk more about dolphins, but I also want to talk about Atlantis. Frank Joseph is our special guest, Xone Nation. And if you'd like to get some more information about Frank, go to www.ancientamerican.com. That's www.ancientamerican.com. And the name of Frank's book that we're talking about this hour, which is yet released, all right? So you'll have a little bit of time to tell all your friends about this great book, especially those people who, like Frank and I, have had the experience of interacting with these wonderful mammals. And the name of the book is Our Dolphin Ancestors. This is the Xone. I am Rob McConnell. This is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern. From 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the Xone Broadcast Network and our growing family of broadcast affiliates and radio stations right around the world. If you'd like to send me an email, xone@xoneradiotv.com. And don't forget, you can now go to xonetv.com. That's xonetv.com and watch all 12 episodes of the Xone TV show from Season 1, which was 2015. Frank Joseph is my special guest. Dolphins is the topic of this hour. The name of his new book is Our Dolphin Ancestors. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here in the Xone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. The Xone is a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. The Xone radio show is broadcast live from our Hamilton, Ontario Broadcast Centre, Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. until midnight Eastern, right here on the Xone Broadcast Network and on our worldwide family of radio broadcast and satellite programming affiliates. UFOs, aliens, ghosts, hauntings, Bigfoot, lake monsters, unsolved mysteries, conspiracies, cover-ups, and much more. So plan to join me, Rob McConnell, right here in the Xone on the Xone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, or listen to the Xone Radio Show archives 24/7, 365, and the live broadcast at www.xzoneradiotv.com. Thomas Jefferson was a Burgess of 27 when he met Martha Wales Skelton, a 22-year-old widowed heiress who was fondly called Patty by her family. They were married on January the 1st, 1772, and they took up residence in a cabin on the building site on top of a Virginia mountain that Thomas had named Monticello. As Thomas and Patty slowly built their first version of the great house at Monticello, the Revolutionary War was heating up. Patty, with difficulty, bore 5 children, but only 2 girls survived. Thomas's political career developed to the point where he was often away from home, but after he authored and signed the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia, he resolved never again to leave his wife. He was elected the governor of Virginia, just as that state became the Revolution's last battleground. The Revolutionary War ended in 1781, and Thomas gladly retired altogether to my family, my farm, and my books. But Patty continued to want to bear her treasured husband a son, and late in the summer of 1782, she died of kidney failure at the age of 33, 4 months after having borne yet another girl. Thomas was so devastated by her death that he never remarried. He mourned her for the rest of his life, even as he helped to frame the peace in France and then became the first Secretary of State, the second Vice President, and the third President of the United States. This story is true. Thomas Jefferson was such an obsessive letter writer and record keeper that we know where he was and what he was doing nearly every day of his adult life. Every significant thing he says in My Thomas comes from his contemporary writings. My Thomas by Roberta Grimes is now available at Barnes & Noble, Costco, Target, Books A Million, Hudson Booksellers, Kmart, Walmart, Sam's Club, Walgreens, CVS, and online at Amazon.com. You can visit Roberta Grimes online at www.robertagrimes.com.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Wilda Wieka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we will weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Wilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the Xone Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Starr began to demonstrate a metaphysical connection to the spirit world as a little girl. Her family noticed the connection, but it was a great-grandmother who told the family that Linnea was indeed gifted. The great-grandmother, who was also gifted, felt that Linnea had indeed inherited these attributes. It has been noticed that oftentimes such things are passed down through the generations. Linnea was also born with a caul, a thin white membrane across the newborn's face. Legend has it that if the baby is born with this caul, the child will have second sight, or what we call psychic abilities. Linnea Starr does past, present, and future, and has the gift of prophecy. It is written within scriptures that if you are able to give factual information, and prophecies indeed come true, the gift indeed comes from the divine realm. Linnea Starr does large interactive groups as well as private gatherings. For more information on Linnea Starr or to contact Linnea for a one-on-one consultation, visit her website at www.linneastar.com. That's www.linneastar.com.
You're listening to the Xone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
Welcome back, everyone. Frank Joseph is my special guest. He's got a brand new book that's going to be out shortly, I hope. It's entitled Our Dolphin Ancestors. And if you'd like more information about our good friend Frank, or if you'd like to see what other books he has written, and you can order them at www.ancientamerican.com. Frank, always great talking to you, my good friend. But I have to ask you something. With dolphins, do they favor one sex over the other?
Not that they favor one sex over the other, but they relate to one sex differently than the other. Matter of fact, dolphins have a kind of general protocol when approaching men, women, or children. When they approach men, they usually approach them for working with them. There are a number of native peoples around the world who have for untold generations cooperated with wild dolphins in fishing. I'm thinking especially about the people of Mauritania in West Africa, Also, New Zealanders and Australian Aboriginals have worked with wild dolphins in helping bring in the catch. In Australia, the headman will make a certain whistle, sometimes a song. The dolphins then approach and herd fish into the nets of the fishermen, and the fishermen then share some of their fish with the dolphins. That's sort of amazing.
Unreal.
With women, the dolphins are interested in women's ability to reproduce. There is a common story that illustrates this, again in Florida, where a woman visitor to a dolphin park, an open dolphin park in which wild dolphins could come and interrelate with people. They were not trained dolphins or captive dolphins. This one woman was visiting there for the first time, and a dolphin would dive down to the bottom of the water there, which wasn't very deep, about maybe 20 feet, and come up with a pebble on the end of its snout, and would toss this pebble with great skill at the woman's stomach, very gently. And the dolphin would continuously do that. It would dive down, come to the surface, look at the woman, and then toss this pebble that would bounce off this woman's stomach. So eventually everybody in the area thought this was pretty funny. They'd never seen this before. And the woman said, well, that dolphin knows something the rest of you don't. I'm pregnant. And this is typical of the dolphin's interest in human female, the reproductive. There's also, unfortunately, or dramatically, however you want to put it, male dolphins take a sexual interest in human females. It's, matter of fact, it's not good for a woman sometimes if she's menstruating to be in the water with dolphins. It drives them almost wild. Dolphins.
I had a guest on the show. Ahead. I had a guest on the show, Frank, who was a dolphin trainer at one of the large parks in the United States. And he said that he had a female dolphin fall in love with him.
Yes, that's happened too. Yeah.
And I'm not kidding you, Frank, with what I'm going to say here. That he actually claims that he had sex with the dolphin.
That's correct. Yes. Now there are several cases like that. As you bring out, these are not extreme cases of people that are perverts or something. There was a very important assistant to Dr. John Lilly, and Dr. John Lilly back in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s was the leading researcher on dolphins. He spent his own private fortune to make some terrific finds there. And one of his very close assistants, highly trained assistants, actually had sexual liaisons with a dolphin there. And then when these liaisons were broken off, when it was found out about it, stopped, the dolphin pined away. Yep. The dolphin just literally died of a broken heart because it could no longer have a relationship with this woman anymore.
Unreal.
So there's a Russian experiment which I cite in the book, and I cite it with tongue-in-cheek because the documentation for it is not strong. After the fall of the Soviet Union, a lot of records were lost. But the reason I cite it is because I believe that this experiment is correct, that it did take place. And this experiment, which took place around 1959, involved two Russian children, who were literally raised with dolphins. They were very young. They were like about 3 years old, and they were raised with dolphins. And they found some remarkable effects on the children, all very positive effects, terrific effects, almost miraculous. But when the children began to mature, when they began to approach adolescence, the dolphins took a strong sexual interest in both of them, especially the girl, however, and the Russians terminated the experiment. Now, if you look at this in the context of this long and very peculiar relationship between dolphins and humans, and then you are able to see this photograph, which I publish in my book, which has not been often seen. This photograph was made only about 2 or 3 years ago. It's a remarkable photograph. It's a photograph of a dolphin embryo, typical bottlenose dolphin embryo in its early stage. And the physical resemblance between this dolphin embryo and a human embryo is remarkably close. The dolphin embryo has legs and knees and toes. It has hands and fingers and a thumb. The head looks extremely human. There are, of course, aquatic traits already developing, webs and tails and so forth.
Right.
But nonetheless, it's remarkable.
I have to ask you this at this time, Frank. Is there a connection between dolphins and the lost continent of Atlantis?
Well, having said what I just said, yes, there was, and why there would be. Plato tells us in his description of Atlantis that in the Holy of Holies, the great temple of Poseidon, his statue was surrounded by 100 smaller statues of dolphins bearing girls on their backs. Now, that would not have been put in there as mere decoration. All indications are that the dolphin was highly revered on Atlantis. And the reason why was because these children that I mentioned that were part of the Russian experiment in 1959, it was found that these kids, as they grew up, their intelligence level was incredibly high. They performed extremely well in school. They had regular schooling in addition to living with dolphins all the time. And their sense of compassion was outstanding. They had a terrific sense of compassion and fellow feeling, not just for other animals, but for people in general. Although they loved the dolphins and loved being with them all the time, they didn't have such an exclusivity that they didn't like any other creatures. And I think that this experiment that the Russians had, I think, was something that the Atlanteans understood, that they were somehow, we don't know how, were able to develop these relationships with dolphins to become the superior civilization that they created. I think that it plays a part in Atlantean spirituality and in the intellectual and emotional development of their people, and that made them such a great people for so long.
Now, throughout history, there have been stories of children being raised by wild animals. And and are there similarities that you're aware of, Frank, of these other cases where children have been raised by animals? I understand that there was a child who was raised by a group of wolves. A female wolf took care of this child.
Yes, there have been several children that have been raised by wolves, yeah.
And is there any similarity between the raising of the children by the wolves and those being raised by dolphins?
Absolutely none. They're completely different. The children that have been raised by wolves were very wolf-like, very competitive, aggressive, and they really were wolves. It really brought out the wolfish characteristics in them. Now, the difference here is that the children that were raised by wolves were with the wolves continuously. There was no human supervision whatsoever, and so all of these wolfish characteristics were imparted on this young creature, this young human being. Whereas the children that have been raised with dolphins, so there have been several attempts at this, have always been under strict human supervision, in which the children are not placed in any danger whatsoever, and they're allowed to live more or less natural lives outside of their close interaction with dolphins all the time. And in these experiments, the results are almost exactly the same. Well, they are exactly the same. That the children love the dolphins very much. The dolphins love the children. There's a terrific, many times there's evidence of psychic abilities in the children, telepathy, psychokinesis, things like this. This is why the Russian experiment was so controversial in 1959, because things like telepathy and psychokinesis and the rest of it were regarded as just witchcraft. In those days, people didn't think about these things. And here are these kids that are developing these characteristics. The girl, for example, this isn't that hard to believe, but the girl developed incredible swimming characteristics. I mean, when she eventually became a teenager, she just won all kinds of speed records. And the boy did too. The boy couldn't swim quite as fast as the girl, but they were terrific swimmers. And the scary thing, and this we don't have the records for, unfortunately. I said the Soviet Union fell, and a lot of this is wrecked. But the indications are, and this is the hardest thing to believe about this, the children were actually growing webs between their toes and their fingers. That is according to what the Russians said, that there was an actual physical change going on. Now, that is a phenomena that really does exist. It's called syndactyly. And in syndactyly, that means that a person is born with webs between their fingers and toes. And a study was made not too long ago in which it was found that 7% of the children in England had 7% of the male children have webbed fingers and toes, syndactyly. 9% of the girls have syndactyly. That's a really high percentage. There have been a lot of famous people that have had syndactyly, or this web between their fingers and toes, like Stalin was one, Dan Aykroyd is another one. I can just think off the top of my head. So it's not that rare. And I believe that syndactyly, or these webs between the fingers and the toes, that is so pronounced in some people, I think it's a remnant characteristic. I think that our ancestors long ago were far more webbed because we spent a long time in the ocean. I think we went through an aquatic phase, and during that aquatic phase, we were turning into dolphin-like or mermaid-like creatures. Then the seas retreated, and they stranded us back on land. We had partial sea mammal characteristics, but we had to develop back to a land environment again. I think that's what basically happened, and these vestigial traits are still with us. Early human embryos also have gill slits. It's amazing. I mean, there are a number of aquatic features in our bodies that cannot be explained and are totally different than our nearest relatives, chimpanzees.
Well, when we look at it, while we are inside our mothers, we're in embryonic fluid.
Yeah.
We're in water.
Yes, we are. We're in a very watery condition.
That's right. Plus, our body is comprised of what percentage of water?
Oh, it's like 78%, something like that, salt water.
Is it possible, Frank, is it possible that we are going to start evolving back to our roots, so to speak, as aquatic creatures, as the climate changes, melting the ice, raising the sea to what many people believe may in fact cause massive flooding and the total destruction of land masses?
That is actually already happening. There are certain island populations of people. Well, the one I can think of, the most famous example, are the Hawaiians. And the Hawaiian people, they have a tendency, the average Hawaiian has a tendency to put on a lot of weight. And this is not because they are self-indulgent. They become very heavy. They become very blubbery. And that's because they have always spent a lot of time in the water. They actually develop a kind of a blubber. There was a famous swimmer who swam the length of the Colorado River back in the 1960s, and he spent years and years in training. His body actually changed, in which he became more blubbery. It is a common feature of Olympic swimmers that if they swim a lot, they have a real weight problem, even though they are on strict diets and they're in best physical shape imaginable. The human body, just given enough water stimulus over time, develops this mammalian trait. We have what is known as subcutaneous fat. In other words, blubber. Human beings have blubber. Chimpanzees do not have this. They have subcutaneous fat to a far lesser degree. They only use subcutaneous fat as some kind of a guard against some of their organs. Our subcutaneous fat is far thicker than anything necessary or needed to protect any of our organs. We love water. Water state property is the most expensive property anywhere you go. Chimpanzees, all other primates, our closest animals, they hate water. They won't go anywhere near water. They get their water, their moisture from the fruits they eat. They're not equipped for it. An ape or a chimpanzee with its flaring nostrils that are open would drown immediately. We are natural-born swimmers. I think these are all vestigial traits of our aquatic past that we went through, and I think that we shared it with the dolphins, and that's why the book is called Our Dolphin Ancestors. I think that the dolphins know this. Why else will the dolphins go out of their way and they do go out of their way to save our lives or to heal us physically and emotionally. I think that their culture realizes that we have an evolutionary affinity with them that we do not yet understand.
Is it possible that the dolphins are the evolutionary goal for humanity? That they are part of our future? Because, before you gave the example of how humans love water and how humans love to live around water on the coasts and so on, and chimpanzees, to whom many believe we are, derived from.
Well, it's supposed to be our closest relation to the chimp, but they hate water.
But does that fact alone, Frank, give argument to the case that we did not evolve from the ape? And that we did, in fact, evolve from the sea?
Alone. No, I would say not that fact alone. There's a great many complementary facts that I think in the aggregate do definitely point to an aquatic phase. I'm absolutely sure that we must have gone through that, probably in East Africa, maybe as long ago as, 2 to 3 million years ago. It's very difficult to say for sure. I posit certain different chronologies in the book, but I'm absolutely convinced that the only way we can explain our great differences from the chimpanzee, to which we are closely related, certainly, and our close affinity with the dolphin. And when I saw that photograph of the dolphin embryo and its human-like resemblances, I was shocked.
Wow.
And I really believe that there is this affinity that's going on.
Frank, as always, when you're with us, time goes by so fast, my good friend. Again, congratulations on yet another startling book, another great book.
Well, it's supposed to be out in about another couple of months, but it can be ordered now at Amazon.com. That's the place to get it. And apparently they are getting a rush on copies already, so if people want to put their order in now, they'll be assured of getting a copy rather than waiting too long. They can do that best from Amazon.com.
And, of course, you can always go to Frank's website at www.ancientamerican.com. Frank Joseph, thank you, sir, for sharing your time with us, and to you and your lovely wife, Laura, a very happy New Year, my friend, and I look forward to the next time you join us back here in the Xone.
I hope it happens soon.
So do I, my friend. Take care of yourself, Frank. The next time you're with us, we're going to have to talk more about Atlantis.
Oh, yes, of course.
Take care, Frank. Once again, Xone Nation.
Take care, Rob.
Bye-bye, sir. Once again, Xone Nation.
Bye.
Frank Joseph, www.ancientamerican.com, and his new book, Our Dolphin Ancestors, available through Amazon. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the Xone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.